Hi, welcome to our 12th Fall Prevention Month lunchtime talk. Yesterday we had Dr. Avril Mansfield talk to us about exercise. She mentioned that it was really important to incorporate balance training in your exercise program. If you want to learn more about the different exercise programs she mentioned, you can check out our YouTube video and there's a link in the description. Today we have Anton Trinh joining us from the University of Waterloo. He works with Dr. Bill McElroy, and he's going to talk to us more about a portable balance and walking assessment tool that they've developed and that they have implemented in the Schlegel villages. So I'm excited to learn more.
Thanks for the intro there, Christiane. So I'm here today to talk about the portable balance and mobility assessments that we use at the Schlegel villages. So why do we care about measuring balance? Well, as we get older, safely maintaining an active lifestyle is important for us to maintain our independence as well as our health. But as we get older, the risk for falling also increases. So we don't want to discourage older adults from being less active. We want them to maintain their activity or increase it, but safely. So we want to minimize falls for these individuals. And how do we minimize falls? We can screen individuals for balance and mobility issues. So here is a typical test that people would use to measure balance and mobility. It's called the timed up and go or Tug Test. What we have is an individual who sits in a chair and a clinician will watch this person get up from the chair, walk 3 meters, and then walk around a cone and return back to the chair. This test relies on the expertise of the person watching them, and that person will take notes about how that person is moving around. This is a great test because it's short and easy, but what it doesn't tell us is about the specific problems that a person might have with their balance or mobility. And for researchers, this doesn't tell us enough information about specific control issues. So, in the lab, we have tools like force plates and gait mats that give us data about someone's walking and their balance. These tools will measure the timing and the size of different movements. For the force plates, we're looking at balance and how much someone sways. And with the gait mats, we're looking at the timing and number of steps that someone takes in a 25-foot walk. These tools are great, but for clinicians working at the front end line of falls prevention, so these are the individuals who are screening people for falls risk or coming up with interventions, these tools are inaccessible because they cost lots of money, upwards from tens of thousands of dollars. So my goal at Waterloo was to come up with a way to sensitively measure balance and mobility, but at a lower cost for clinicians. And so we've come up with this portable balance and mobility toolkit where we're using Wii balance boards from the Nintendo gaming system and accelerometers affixed to the ankles and the hip. And these sensors interface with a tablet that uses a software that we've developed at Waterloo. And together, this kit here will provide clinicians with sensitive measures of balance and mobility, but at a cost of $2,000 or less, so 1/10 of the cost of what typical lab equipment would be. In addition to coming up with this balance and mobility toolkit, we've wanted to standardize tasks that we have in the assessment to look at specific areas of control. What we want to focus on include balance, strength, cognition, as well as mobility. And for each of these areas, we're looking at specific tasks that tell us specific information. So for example, with balance, we might want to look at sensory systems. So how does a person maintain their balance when they have their eyes closed or eyes open? We can also look at strength. So sit to stand using the Wii balance boards. Together with these standardized tasks, as well as the portable assessment, we can gather lots of information, spit it out into a report like this that tells us specific areas that someone might have trouble with. And we can take this report, go to the resident or a community member, and the clinician can explain this is an area that we might need to work on, or this is an area that you're doing great in. So more information allows us to come up with a more targeted intervention for people who do have problems with balance and mobility. To give you examples of things that we look at inside the balance and mobility assessment, here's my boss, Dr. Bill McElroy, and what he's doing is he's standing on the Wii balance boards with his feet together. So we have individuals stand with either their feet apart or feet together as still as they can for 30 seconds. And from the Wii boards, we're looking at how much they sway. Specifically, we're looking at how much their center of pressure sways. This is basically the foot pressure on the board. And we look at how much someone sways, particularly in the left and the right direction. So someone who has greater sway in the left and right direction is at greater risk for falling in the future. And this has been well established in scientific research. With the accelerometers, we're looking at changes in walking. Again, here's my boss walking, and he has accelerometers attached to his ankles as he's walking. The accelerometers track changes in movement in 3 dimensions, and from that we can get things like gait velocity, or how fast someone is walking, and step variability. In the top right, we have the signal pulled off the accelerometers. In the red is our right leg, and in the blue is our left leg. And so we're looking at sort of the timing between the peaks in the movement of the walking. The more consistent the timing is between the peaks, that person would have a less variable walk. People who have greater inconsistencies between the peaks, that person would have greater variability in the walk. And so these are sort of things that we're looking at to look at the quality of walking in individuals. We look at variability for different tasks, and the reason why is because variability does give us information about future fall risk. The more variable someone's walk is, the more at risk they are for falling in the future. For one individual, we'll have them do a 25-foot walk at their comfortable pace quietly, and then we'll have them do the same distance, but walking and talking at the same time. So on the left, this person is just walking quietly, and we can see that the timing between the red and the blue peaks, or the left and the right leg, are fairly consistent. But when we ask them to walk and talk, we see that the timing between the different steps has become more inconsistent, so more variable. And again, this all ties back to greater variability increases your risk for falling in the future during walking. So to tie this all together, I have a case study here. This is Mrs. M. She's one of the residents at one of our Schlegel villages, and they come in once a year and we do a balance and mobility assessment on them. And then we go over their goals, look at the report, and then discuss what we want to do for the following year. Mrs. M is 88 years old. She's 166 centimeters tall. She weighs 55 kilograms, and she has a BMI of 20. She's a fairly typical older female adult that lives in the community. She does not use a walking aid, and she would rate her fear of falling at 0 out of 10, so no fear whatsoever. And she would rate her balance 5 out of 10. So not perfect balance, but not at the lower end of balance, sort of an average balance. Mrs. M has a few health issues related to cardiovascular health, bone health, as well as a shoulder injury that she sustained when she was younger. Mrs. M also is on 13 medications. So she represents our typical female older adult that lives in the community. So I thought this would be a good case study to show you guys. Before going through the assessment, Mrs. M and us sat down to talk about our goals. She identified 2 areas that she wanted to work on. One was to maintain her walking ability without an aid, and 2, improve her ability to get out of a chair. So we did the assessment, which involves a few balance tasks, some walking tasks, and transitions. And we got a report, and we went over the report with Mrs. M. And I'll go over the specific areas of the report that pertain to her goals. So, continue walking without an aid. For this, Mrs. M walked 25 feet, and what we're looking at is how fast does it take her to walk those 25 feet. Here's the score bar. So the further to the right you are, the better the score compared to people of the same age and same gender. And further to the left, the less better your score is compared to people of the same age and gender. There's also colors associated with the bars. Green means you're good. Orange is an area that you're starting to fall out of good. And red is sort of the red zone, an area that we want to look at and improve on. So Mrs. M did fairly well in the 25-foot walk. She did it with no aid. Her walking speed was 1.15 meters per second, which is fairly high for someone of her age and gender. And when we ask her to do a walking and talking task, we're looking at the dual task cost. She slowed down about 26%. So what that dual task cost is how long or how much longer does it take for someone to complete the same distance for that walking and talking task. So she doesn't slow down a lot, but she does slow down a little bit. Mrs. M wanted to improve her ability to get up and out of a chair. So we're looking at sit to stand. This is a transitions task. This involves a bit of balance as well as leg strength. Here we have her do a 5-time sit to stand, and this is sort of a standard task for looking at leg strength. It takes her 23 seconds, basically. And compared to females of the same age, she does not as great. So she's further to the left and in the orange zone. In addition to taking longer to do the 5-time sit to stand, she also used her arms to help her get up. So rather than using her legs to stand up completely, she needed assistance from her arms or the armchairs, or chairs, arms of the chair, armrest. Thank you. So these are sort of the scores that we look at from the balance and mobility assessment. We talk these over with the individuals and come up with a plan. For Mrs. M, her walking speed was great. No issue there. But there is the associated risk for falling with higher walking speeds, particularly outside. So we want to make sure Mrs. M is aware of that. Places like Canada, where it gets pretty icy and wet outside, we want to make sure that she's aware of her environment and she is careful when she's walking. That's her walking. For getting up and out of a chair, the slower time for the 5-time sit to stand is a flag for us that there might be some strength issues associated with her legs. We know that she's strong up top, so grip strength with no loss, that's what WNL means. So maybe that's why she actually uses her arms to help her get up out of the chair, because she's weaker in the legs, but her arms are strong enough, so that's how she gets up and out of a chair. So we'll want to get her to go through a lower body strengthening program, and maybe also work on dynamic balance. Maybe she's going up and down out of the chair slowly because she feels a bit woozy when she gets up. And so with a bit of dynamic balance training, we can sort of help her with that. So that's the end of the case study. This balance and mobility toolkit is used at several sites for Schlegel villages in retirement homes. And the Ontario Brain Institute also uses a bit of the balance and mobility toolkit that we have here. Thanks for listening, and feel free to ask me any questions.